Let's assume you're not crazy, which is already a big assumption if you clicked on this video. You just completed a casual playthrough of Undertale, or perhaps multiple playthroughs to see all of the endings, but because you're so casual, you never looked deep into the fandom or wikis. Despite having experienced everything the game has to offer, you likely didn't hear about the hidden character of W.D. Gaster. He never appears in the game, nor does any character or flavor text ever reference him. The only way you'd know about this Kiss reject is if you looked into the game's code, or had one of these funny numbers in your save file's fun value, whatever that means. In those cases, you could run into Gaster's followers, his theme in the sound test, or perhaps even meet the man himself. Because there's so much background attention given to what's otherwise a completely hidden character, the Undertale fanbase has gone absolutely rabid for any scrap of information regarding Gaster for almost a decade now. Perhaps too rabid.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
So by the time Deltarune started releasing all of its chapters, the fandom immediately pieced together Gaster's involvement. For starters, Toby Fox always promotes new chapters on the official Twitter account by speaking in a very similar way to entry number 17, a message written by Gaster hidden inside of Undertale's code. This same manner of speaking is used at the beginning of Deltarune when the player is creating a vessel, and has so far appeared sporadically throughout the game, as recently as the ending of Chapter 4. Gaster's theme from Undertale can also be heard within different songs throughout Deltarune in what's known as the Gaster Motif. I'll drop a couple of videos in the description that go more in depth on the music if you're interested in learning more, but the takeaway here is that Gaster's presence can be felt throughout the game, even within the music itself. So it's very obvious that Gaster is involved in Deltarune, but between this game and Undertale, all we really know about him is that he's a scientist who is shattered across space and time that's able to communicate directly with the players, similar to Flowey and Chara. Oh, and he also has a relationship to Sans that we still know nothing about. He just happens to be a little more upfront in Deltarune than he was in Undertale. However, even with that being the case, the average casual player would still not know that this strange voice is Gaster. It just comes across as creepy narration unless you're deep enough within the fandom to recognize the speech pattern. Which leaves us with the question, will Gaster appear in Deltarune? I'd say yes. After a decade's worth of teasing dating back to Undertale, he'll likely make an appearance before the end of Deltarune, but I don't believe he'll have some huge mastermind role that everyone's foaming at the mouth for. Of course, the main reason being all of the aforementioned casual players who aren't even familiar with Gaster. If he ended up being the main antagonist of Deltarune, it would feel like more of an ass pull than anything. Who the hell is this, and why am I just hearing about him this late into the game? It would also be a nightmare of information overload, because the story right now is focused on the Knight and their identity, which is already a massive rabbit hole itself. So finding out Gaster was pulling the strings the whole time would only be paying off breadcrumbs for a relatively small slice of hardcore fans, at least in comparison to the thousands playing Deltarune. With that in mind, I believe we need to look back at the very nature of Gaster to accurately predict his future appearance in the game. That nature being hidden in the shadows, whether it's in Undertale's code, secret Easter eggs, or within Deltarune's soundtrack. Gaster is largely hidden after all, a secret. You know what else are largely secrets in Deltarune? The hidden bosses in each of the game's chapters. You see, I like to think Deltarune is telling two overlapping storylines. You have the main plot with the Dark Worlds, Deaths, and the Knight, and you also have the Shadow Crystal storyline that deals with the secret bosses. When we inspect this hidden storyline a little more closely, that's when we start seeing all of the Gaster references. For instance, the blacksmith Shawm tells us that Jevil started going crazy after meeting someone strange, causing his worldview to become darker yet darker, a direct quote from Gaster in entry number 17. In regards to Spamton, we know that a mysterious person on a phone once helped him achieve fame, but ditched him later on, leaving him with the failure we have today. We got an interesting detail about this from one of the Addisons, who says the person on the other end of the phone sounded like garbage noise. We can hear this garbage noise for ourselves by trying to make a phone call at any point in the Dark World. This is the same audio that can be heard in entry number 17. So it's fair to assume Gaster played a role in turning Jevil and Spamton crazy, but what about the other Shadow Crystal bosses? Gerson says he found his Shadow Crystal in his desk and he felt as though someone wanted him to use it, but was ultimately too creeped out by it to take any interest. Based on the common trend here, we can assume that someone was Gaster. Finally, we have the Knight, who's connected to Gaster through the shelter. When you stand outside of it, you can hear a muffled sound, and if you speed this sound up by 666%, the number commonly associated with Gaster, it sounds just like the entry number 17 garbage noise.
Just shut the fuck up with that bullshit.
Yes, given the information we have about Gaster, you could definitely make the argument that he could play a much bigger role in Deltarune than I'm giving him credit for. Maybe he'd take on a Porky role, with the Knight being the masked man. That wouldn't be too far off track given Toby Fox's love for the Mother series. I just can't see that realistically happening myself. Gaster has always lurked around on the outside of the world, and there's already way too much happening within the world itself for his inclusion to feel anything but forced. I think meeting Gaster face to face will happen and pay off all of the Easter eggs over the years, and maybe we'll finally get to learn his backstory in connection to Sans. Maybe he did do something on a grand scale like set the soul in Dark Worlds into motion. After all, he refers to the game as My Deltarune at the end of Chapter 4. But regardless, he'll still remain an Easter egg, a grand prize for the dedicated players that went searching for him, and not someone that just decided to fully insert themselves without meaningful build-up. I feel given Gaster's nature, being a reward that players have to go out of their way to find stays true to the character without disrupting the pace of the main story, just like the Shadow Crystal bosses themselves. This underlying presence helps to strengthen that second hidden narrative, connecting pieces together without giving us the full picture just yet. But honestly, who knows? It's impossible to predict what's going on in Toby Fox's mind, so maybe Gaster is actually a real entity that's gonna jump out of our computers if we lose to him as the final boss of the game. That's what makes Gaster feel so special. He feels like a secret you're not supposed to know, and that mystique is what keeps us theorizing to this day. So whether he remains a background ghost or a god tier boss that'll tell us the meaning of life, Gaster will be lurking, watching. That's all for now. Let me know what you think about Gaster and the role he'll play in the future in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good one.